stretching across the continents to provide you positive, relevant, and balanced information with fresh insight from those in the know, right in the land, focusing a biblical lens on Israel and the Middle East. You're watching Focal Point.
Welcome to another informative edition of Focal Point, where we endeavor to bring you a positive and relevant report about the issues affecting Israel and the Middle East. We are so glad that you could be here to join us today.
That's right, Stacy. We sure are. And we're thrilled to be able to share with our viewers some amazing insight from people right in the land of Israel on issues that we are certain will be of interest to them. Stacy, what are some of the stories we have coming up in the next half hour?
Well, in a little while, our Sam Hales takes us to the center of London for the celebration of Israel's 65th birthday. And after that, we discuss Aliyah, the immigration of the Jews from the nations back to their ancestral homeland.
And later on, you won't want to miss some fresh insight from Rick Ridings as he shares the current prayer needs for Israel today, as well as some insight on end-time prophecy.
Starting things off, however, Focal Point's Dan Tracy brings us a very relevant interview from a German journalist who has been covering situations regarding Islam as they relate to Europe as well as Israel.
Hi, Stacy. I'm here in Burkhardsdorf, and I'm going to be talking with Johannes Gerloff, who is a German journalist who lives in the land of Israel with his family. His kids go to Hebrew schools. They've integrated into the society, and he has deep insight into the relationship between Israel and Germany and Germans and the Jewish people. Is the Islamization of Germany or Europe even an issue of concern?
I don't think that the Islamization is a real point of concern. Much more a problem is whether people here are aware of this challenge. And we are being sent as believers into a world that is rebelling against its creator. So it's not something unusual that we are living in an environment that is hostile towards our faith or our belief. The question is much more, are we aware of it? And how do we take this challenge up? And what I see a big potential here in Germany is a potential of explosion, because people are not aware that there is this challenge, and in the end it might boil down to some kind of ethnic or racial or religious conflict where we react in a, I say, crusaders way, instead of seeing that maybe our Lord, who is the God of history, brought a missions field right to our doorsteps.
A lot of people think that behind Islamization is actually a strategy of Islam to not only religiously but politically take over a nation.
I'd like to answer your question in two parts. If I talk as a journalist and I have to work in a secular way, seeing what I see, asking people what they think, responding to that, I do not know whether it's a strategy of Islam as a whole. There are certainly organizations, there might be even states like Saudi Arabia, who have objectives, who follow these objectives, who want to spread their faith like we do. I do not know whether it's an overall strategy if you see the immigration of Turkish foreign workers or immigrant workers here in Germany, whether that is an overall strategy. If I answer the question as a theologian, as a believer, as somebody who looks at the Bible and takes the Bible seriously as God's Word, then I would say yes, we are living in a spiritual struggle.
As a German journalist living in the land of Israel, what positive developments could you share with us regarding the relationship between Germany and Israel and or Germans and Israelis?
I think the overall picture at the moment is not very positive. I see a growing resistance against Israel, a growing resentment against Israel, even growing anti-Semitism, not just in Germany, all over Europe. I do not know North America, but from an Israeli point of view, and I'm reporting from Israel and see the world from an Israeli point of view, it is a very problematic situation where we are in. But I understand, I as a German see normally the negative. You want me to see the glass that is half full. There are very positive developments. If I see, we are talking here from the 17th Saxonian Conference of Israel Friends, that we had just last year 80 craftsmen, specialists, working in Israel, serving Holocaust survivors, serving victims of rocket attacks against Israel in their simple way of renovating, of reinstalling apartments. It's a great thing. And I saw Holocaust survivors change their attitudes towards Germans. That is an amazing thing.
Well, Johannes, thank you very much for your insight, and thanks for taking the time for the interview.
After a short break, we sit down in Jerusalem with Michael Freund to discuss the trials and triumphs of those immigrating home to the land of Israel. And later, we discuss intercession and end-time prophecy with the founder of Sukkot Hallel, Rick Ridings.
But right now, we want you to take a look at an amazing hands-on ministry right in the heart of Jerusalem. For over 25 years, Christian Friends of Israel has been ministering to the people in the biblical heartland, one life at a time.
Shalom, my name is Ray Sanders. I'm the Executive Director and Co-Founder of Christian Friends of Israel in Jerusalem. If you've never considered a visit to the land of Israel, we as Christian Friends encourage you to do so. This is an amazing country of many opportunities that God is doing in these last days. Come and see what Jewish people have done over the last 65 years developing this beautiful nation.
And I'm Sharon Sanders, co-founder of Christian Friends of Israel Jerusalem, and I invite you also to be a part of this ministry that God has raised up in Jerusalem for Christians to be able to partnership and to be a blessing to Israel. Christians from all over the world have come to make this ministry alive. We're living stones and living witnesses to the Jewish people of how much we love them and appreciate them for all they have given to the world, and especially to the church. We have decided to obey the command in Genesis 12:3, which says, I will bless those who bless my people. And we have developed projects that touch the lives of many Jewish people, and you are able to be a part. You are able to partnership with us in this work. We have an outreach to immigrants who are coming from around the world. Over 250,000 have come to our doors to receive help and assistance while they're settling back in their land. I think CFI, Christian Friends of Israel, has probably one of the most beautiful bridal salons in the country, as Christians from all over the world have stocked and supplied this beautiful salon. And then we have an outreach to survivors of the Holocaust who are getting older and obviously have only a certain amount of time to tell of what they saw, what they witnessed during the Nazi Holocaust. We also have an outreach to the church in Israel and to believers throughout the land. And in addition to that, we have an outreach to Ethiopian Jewry who've come from Addis Ababa in miraculous airlifts, and they need a lot of help in settling back into the land. We have various projects that touch the lives in a special way, undoing damage that the historical church did against the Jewish people for centuries. Will you help us? Will you be there with us, be connected with our hands and our feet as we're on the ground here for you to be able to say, we're Christians and we're friends of the Jewish people. Thank you for tuning in. God bless you and shalom.
To partner with the Ministry of Christian Friends of Israel through prayer, volunteering, or financial gifts, please visit cfijerusalem.org.
Welcome back. June of 2013 marked the celebration of Israel's 65th year of independence as a nation. FocalPoint's UK correspondent Sam Hales was at the center of the festivities that took place in London to commemorate this new milestone.
That's right, I'm here with a contingent from Christian Friends of Israel at this huge parade right here in central London. There are literally thousands of people lining the streets to celebrate 65 years of Israel. And we are marching now all the way down to Trafalgar Square, where there's going to be music, celebrations and speeches given. So tell me, why are you here today?
Because I love Israel and I believe Christians should support Israel. I think we need to support Israel.
So why are you here today?
Well, to celebrate the 65th anniversary of Israel as a nation. That's a big prophecy that happened in 1948.
Amazing.
And as a Christian, it's nice to know that we live in a prophetic time. And that's why I'm here today.
Tell me, why are you here today?
Because we love the God of Israel, we love his land, we love his people, we love his Messiah. And we're here to stand with you and celebrate.
Well, here we are in Trafalgar Square. There's thousands of people flooding in right now as I speak. And behind me there's going to be a big celebration this afternoon. We have 2 hours of speeches, of music. Chief Rabbi Lord Sachs is going to be here addressing the crowds. And there's going to be a big celebration here, all because of Israel turning 65 years old.
And we're very passionate about Zionism and the state of Israel, so that's why we're here. We want to show our support.
We're here today because we love Israel. We consider Israel our home. We feel as though Israel's a place where it's always there with its arms open to us whenever we need it, and it's important for all religions, but particularly for the Jews as an everlasting and eternal home.
We see a country which has absorbed more immigrants per capita than any other nation in the world. Through the eyes of the parents across the generations who gave everything to educate their kids, we see a country with world-class universities, with more degrees per capita, more scientific papers, more medical patents, more doctors. Yes, think of the Nachas, more doctors than any other nation in the world.
My father, who was in the Haganah during the siege of Jerusalem in 1948, taught me that Israel has many borders, many kinds of border. Syria, Egypt, Iran. There are those who risk their lives defending Israel's territorial borders. A visit of 18 soldiers from a crack unit to debrief in our community taught us of the courage, the loyalty, the skill, the humanity, and the longing for peace of those who risk their lives for Israel. We must be supportive and with them on those borders.
Well, it's been a stunning event here in Trafalgar Square today. We've had celebrations through music and speeches. We've had the ambassador from Israel to the UK speaking, Daniel Taub, and he says that Israel exceeds the dreams of our great-grandparents. And that's why everyone has joined here together today to celebrate a nation that has exceeded everybody's dream, to celebrate all that is good about Israel, the innovation, the technology, even the different widespread beliefs. We can all come together and appreciate what a magnificent country Israel is. This is Sam Hales reporting for FocalPoint in Trafalgar Square, London.
The process of immigrating to a new country from another part of the world can be challenging, to say the least. As an immigrant himself, Michael Freund, the founder and chairman of Shavai Israel, recently shared with us his unique perspective of the Aliyah process and the support needed for those making the journey home to Israel.
Being an immigrant is an extremely difficult experience, and it doesn't matter where you come from. As an American Jew, I grew up in the United States. Culturally, I'm still very American. English is my native tongue. I still love the New York Mets and baseball, and I still don't understand soccer or what they call football here. There are those kinds of cultural gaps that often challenge a person. In a sense, the comparison I make in many cases is that the people who make Aliyah, the people who come here, are like the generation of the desert. They're the ones who travel and reach the promised land, but it's really their children who inherit the land. I see that with many of the people that we've helped to bring here. For many of them, it is the fulfillment of the dreams of their ancestors, as well as their own personal dreams, but it's also a hope that they have for their children, to raise their children here in the Jewish state. The Bible tells us in a number of places, particularly in the book of Isaiah, chapter 49:22, that the nations of the world have a role to play, that the nations will carry our sons and daughters of the Jewish people back here to the land at the end of days. This is a biblical mandate. It is God calling out to the peoples of the earth and saying, come, play your role, help my people to come home. I would like to appeal to everyone out there to take this into account and to realize that after 2,000 years of the Jewish people being in exile, God's mercy is now at work, and it is gathering us in. And it is incumbent upon everyone to play their part in helping to make this happen. You can carry us with your love, you can carry us through your prayers, and you can carry us also by supporting this effort. And it's worth bearing in mind the promise that God made to our father Abraham in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 3. And it's a very clear promise. Those who bless you will be blessed. Those who curse you will be cursed. It's a very black and white proposition. There's no gray area in there. A person either blesses Israel or they curse Israel. Everyone has a choice to make. But we don't need to be frightened, because God assures everyone that those who make the right choice, those who stand with the Jewish people, those who decide to bless us, they too then are guaranteed a blessing from above.
Coming up, after we take a short break, you won't want to miss our recent interview with Rick Ridings, who shares his heart on Israel being the prophetic time clock of the end times and some vital things you should be praying about.
But right now, we want you to take another close-up look at the ministry efforts of Christian Friends of Israel in Jerusalem. With 9 distinct outreach projects designed to help the real-life needs of people in the land, CFI continues to be the hands and feet of the Lord's ministry in Israel today.
Shalom, I'm Sharon Sanders and co-founder of an organization, a Christian ministry called Christian Friends of Israel, Jerusalem. And I'm standing beside a small olive tree here in the land. Olive trees are proficient all over the land, and it's a symbol of peace. It's been a symbol of peace ever since the days of Noah, when the dove brought the olive branch back to Noah to let him know that the land was at peace and that all things were well. Well, we think of peace today, and it's a conversation of most media around the world and in the newspapers, the radio, television. And we bring you a way that you can be totally at peace in your relationship with the Jewish people, because God has commanded us in the Bible, in Genesis 12, verse 3, I will bless those who bless my people. And we want to bring a blessing to the Jewish people and let Israel know that her Christian brothers and sisters all over the world are standing strong with them in these days. Will you help us to bring the peace symbol, to show how much our love is for them? You can come alongside of this ministry of Christian Friends of Israel and become a partner with us. You can partner in all the projects, whether it's to Holocaust survivors, victims of terror, Ethiopian Jewry, Russian Jewry, believers in the land, the poorest of the poor and the needy. Many opportunities and choices to choose from to partner with Christian Friends of Israel. And so in this troubled world, in the days in which we live, you can be a symbol of peace by joining alongside of Christian Friends of Israel and becoming this symbol to the Jewish nation. May God bless you as you prayerfully consider to come alongside.
Hi, I'm Ray Sanders. We encourage you to come alongside of our ministry and support the nation, the people of Israel in these last days. God is doing miraculous things among His chosen people, and we want you to be a part of that. So partnership with us and be a blessing to the people of Israel.
You've just seen some stories of real, live people and ministries and organizations within the land of Israel. Come with us again the next time that we come into your home on this program called FocalPoint, and come alongside of the ministry of Christian Friends of Israel, and we'll partner together for the glory of God in this hour. Shalom, and God bless you from Jerusalem.
To partner with the Ministry of Christian Friends of Israel through prayer, volunteering, or financial gifts, please visit cfijerusalem.org.
Thanks for staying with us. Prophecy concerning the nation of Israel can be found all throughout the Bible. But these days, the correlation between Israel and the last days takes on a very special meaning for many. While recently in Jerusalem, we spoke with Rick Ridings, the founder of Sukkot Hallel, a 24/7 prayer and worship ministry overlooking Mount Zion. Rick shares his valuable insight on Israel and prophecy today.
One thing that God said to every believer in the whole world is to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And that's because Satan knew that this city is the city not only for the first coming of Jesus, but for the second coming of Jesus, of Yeshua the Messiah. And that just as Satan tried to stop it all the first time, he had Herod killed all the baby Jewish boys under 2 years old in Bethlehem, and he tried very hard to stop what was going to happen in this city. I believe even now there's like a demonic assignment against this city to try to keep this from being the place from which Jesus will reign and bring peace to all the nations of the earth. So Jerusalem is very much a spiritual battleground. What happens in Israel is a good sign of, it's like a timepiece, like a clock of where God is at in all of prophetic destiny for the world and where He's moving us. And things are changing very rapidly here. The region around us is changing very rapidly. And I think one of the things that intercessors are praying for, and rightfully so, is for protection of the borders of Israel. There are lots of scriptures about that, and it's really important. But we tend to think only of that in terms of land borders. But over the last few years, we've been increasingly aware that the seacoast is a border as well. And there's much happening in the Mediterranean now that is very strategic. Iran has sent boats into the Mediterranean. Russia recently sent a big fleet in for the first time in decades. So a lot of things have happened in the Mediterranean. And the good side of things, Israel has discovered oil, has discovered gas, but that means that some of the other neighbors, such as Hezbollah and Lebanon, say, well, some of that should belong to us. And so there's a potential building for a lot of dangers for Israel coming from the sea. And so I'd encourage intercessors to pray for the seacoast, to proclaim the word of God in Psalm 29, that the voice of the Lord is over the waters. The Lord sits enthroned upon the flood, and declare that the seas are His as well as the mountains and the land. It all belongs to Him, and we need to declare His lordship and His sovereignty and His protective power over the seacoast of Israel, and then to pray that the governmental and military leadership of Israel will have the wisdom to see the potential threats coming from the Mediterranean. I believe it's very clear in Isaiah 60, for example, that He said there would come a time for Israel when He would bring them back, the Jewish people back, and He said, my light will shine upon you, my glory will rise upon you. And yet just a few verses later, He's saying Gentiles will help build up your walls and will be part of this whole process of the rebuilding and the restoration of Jerusalem and of Israel. And it's a moment in time that was prophesied, and everyone who participates in strengthening Jerusalem and strengthening Israel and in encouraging and helping the Jewish people to return as was prophesied in the Scripture is actually an integral part of God's end time plans for this land and for the nations. Many things are being set in place that would seem to fulfill a lot of end time prophecies and end time scriptures. So I think it is a very strategic time, not just a strategic place, but also a very strategic time to do all we can to invest into this land and encourage and build up the people of this land. There's a spiritual dynamic that is very core to what is happening in the Middle East, and that is that the battle is a spiritual battle. It's the battle for Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, it's the battle for Mount Zion, for the Temple Mount, and for who will be worshipped on God's holy hill, and who will reign there. Will Jesus return? Will he reign from there? Will he bring peace to the nations? Satan's doing everything he can to keep Jerusalem from being the city that brings peace to the nations. So that's why God tells all believers everywhere, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
What an amazing thing it must be for so many to find their new home in Israel at such a special time when God seems to be fulfilling His word in the days in which we live.
And as we witness the work of the Lord throughout the land of Israel and the world, it's more important than ever that Christians everywhere get involved and continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Don't forget, one way you can become involved is to go online today and see the tremendous things happening in Israel at cfijerusalem.org. While you're online, don't forget to email us with your feedback and topic ideas at info@focalpointtv.com.
Remember to let us know where you're viewing Focal Point in your country, and if you'd like to find out even more about Israel and the Middle East. We would love to help keep you connected.
You can always reach us by calling the number on your screen. If we happen to miss you, please feel free to leave a message and someone will return your call. As always, we look forward to being with you next time as we turn our point of focus to Israel and the Middle East.
Right here on Focal Point. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Focal Point is brought to you by Christian Friends of Israel, Jerusalem. For more information about any of today's guests, email us at info@focalpointtv.com. To partner with the Ministry of Christian Friends of Israel through prayer, volunteering, or financial gifts, please visit cfijerusalem.org. Focal Point is a production of Level E Media, Incorporated.